Hey everybody, welcome back to another review video. There's my cat, right there. He says hi. Let's jump right in. This one's from Erika. So you said you were provided with a bunch of layers here and your job was to comp them all. I think you've done a really good job here. I think everything's feeling like it's in its place. There was a couple things that I wanted to point out that maybe you could work on. It depends on what you're going for, I think, here, but I do think the depth of field looks a little bit much, and it's making it feel miniature. I think the scale feels like, they're kind of toys dancing, just because of how much depth of field how little depth of field there is. Looks like the plane of focus is probably just like, from the dog's a little out of focus, I think. So it's like probably just this thin. And I think with the characters so far away, at normal scale, if these characters were normal scale or human scale, it would be a little bit deeper. So maybe just look at that. That would also help, I think, bring this disco ball a little bit into focus, which might be nice. The other thing was, and again, this depends on what you're going for, I think, with the image. But these reflections on the, I'm going to call them faces, of the light bulbs, I think maybe they might be a little bit too much. Depends. I think if that's part of what you're going for and that's what you want to see, you can keep it like this. But in my opinion, you might want to take down some of it, because it's a little bit difficult to read at first glance what this even is. Especially this part is quite distracting. So that you might want to take down in comp. But yeah, I think it's pretty successful. I think it's more about just kind of understanding what you want in the image and sort of tuning it to fit that. But great job. So this is after some notes for this shot. I think the last one we talked about, you were trying some fog and it was a little bit too foggy. But I think this level that you have looks really nice. I really like how it's sort of feeling like a misty, super early hours in the morning kind of vibe. Maybe you can go a little darker with the sky. That was my first thought, but I think as is, it's working pretty well as well. Maybe try that and see how it feels to you. I don't think it's bad. I think it's just maybe a little bit darker. The other thing I was wondering is this telephone cord or whatever it is. It's just so black. Right in the middle of the frame, and it sort of looks like, it almost looks like if this was a photo, like it was like cracked or something, right? It's just sort of cutting the frame, and I would be careful with those kinds of things, just because it can feel a little bit odd to the viewer. So if you have the ability, I would maybe try to either lighten it in comp if you have that ability, or go into the material and make it more of like a gray. That might kind of help sit it back a little bit more. So yeah, maybe try that. I mean, honestly, I wouldn't care really if you just lost this line completely, if you just took it out from your scene. It does give a little bit of depth, but it's so thin, it's kind of just messing a little bit with the read. I think everything else here looks really great. You asked about if you, sorry, I'm getting distracted from my cat. You asked about if you should include this in your portfolio. I think yes. I think it's a really nice piece. As is, and especially if you did those notes that we talked about just now. One thing I will say about portfolios is that for me at least, I often like to see them with some sort of movement in it, and it can even be camera movement, right? Not like a lens zoom, not like a 2D zoom, but actual camera movement. So if you were to move your camera through back or forward through this scene, it would just help a lot because when you're looking at reels, if it's just a still, you can never be sure if they just painted over it in Photoshop or if they did something in Photoshop that would not work with a moving image. And if you're applying to studios that make films or TV or anything moving, they want to make sure that you can apply things and it'll work in 3D. So I would say, this scene is really nice as is. Maybe you can play around with pushing forward or pulling back with the camera and then rendering that out and then using that as a portfolio piece. I think that would work really well. I mean, it could even be cool, just off the top of my head thinking about this, if you were to somehow incorporate some sort of story into this piece, I love to see that in Reels. It just gives it a little bit more personality. And I think an easy way you might be able to do that if you want to is, maybe some movement in here indicating, somebody's getting ready or something like that. You maybe, I don't know, if a shadow or something in those windows might be interesting to play around with, or just some sort of movement behind these curtains, or even some sort of movement behind this door. Like you could have someone maybe walking. Ooh, that's a terrible color. Walking this way or something like that, or messing about inside. You don't have to like animate an actual person, but maybe doing something to indicate some sort of movement in one of these houses might be sort of interesting and a relatively easy way to get some sort of implied story into this image. But yeah, even if you don't do that, I think incorporating some camera movement and putting this into your reel, I think it would be really good. Great job. This is from Pete on the Discord. There's a bunch of these images. I grabbed all of them and put them in here in layers so we can take a look at them. I think this is working really well as is, and I think you've done a good job composing everything and getting everything to read. I think it's working quite well. There was a couple things that we could think about plussing this image, and at this point, I think it's a discussion. Well, it's you discussing with yourself what you want to achieve with the image, what sort of mood you want to achieve with the image, because I do feel like it's in a pretty good spot, but it is fairly neutral feeling, right? Like it feels, it doesn't really have a point of view in terms of what you want the mood to feel like. Not as strong, at least, as I think it could. So you have these really nice interactive lighting from the environment, which I think is working well. I think this shot is composed really well. I love the way he's lit in the front, and you can still pay attention to the guy in the back. Really nice storytelling there. And then this shot feels pretty good with the interactive from the screen. I think maybe the screen feels a little dim for how much he's getting, but small thing. And this shot, I think it's the smoke might be a little too thick. I sort of, not seeing it in motion, I think I would want it to be, I would want to read what these are a little bit more. I don't, I understand what you're trying to do with the thicker smoke. I think it's more ominous, but having something underneath it for the audience to read, and if this is important for the story, I think making the smoke a little bit less opaque would help you. Um, but yeah, I mean, on a technical level, I think a lot of this stuff is working well. But what I was thinking of in terms of um, plussing this piece, um, this really reminds me of a lot of movies like Hunt for Red October, and The Abyss, submarine movies, which I think are really beautiful. And I think a lot of what's cool about them is these pockets of light that they're able to play with. Um, Even if maybe they don't quite make sense on an actual submarine, it's just cool. I think this is from Godzilla King of the Monsters. But just having like pools of light that are interesting, um, like this, right? Like this pool of light back here, really creates a lot of depth in the image. And I think something that is, especially in the first shot of this little scene, there's something that's missing, I think, from the first part of this scene is depth. And I'm not sure if you're using an image back there, but it does feel quite flat. And I think maybe it works for like a comedy moment, but for my personal taste, and yours could be different, which is totally fine. It does feel kind of flat. So, you know, getting some other pools of light in here that might not be distracting, but have a little bit of interest and lend a little bit of depth to the image might be cool. Because again, it's working as is. I think I'm just trying to think of things that can help, bring a little bit more to these images. I'm thinking on the fly here, so pardon me for all the stumbling, but I'm just trying to think of what you could do to sort of bring a little bit more to these. I would suggest looking at especially Hunt for Red October. I think it's such a beautifully shot film in such a confined space. And I'm not sure what you're willing to do with this set or anything like that, but I do think there's room for more interest, especially in this first scene. Oh yeah, this curves thing, I was just playing around just to crush the darks a little bit more and up the contrast. Again, your taste, but I think a little more dramatic to sort of have darker darks, and then maybe add some more pools of light there to create interest. But yeah, let me know if that's helpful, and I look forward to seeing what you come up with. Thanks. This one's from Vicious Rockstar. This is a resubmission of a piece that we gave feedback on before, and I think what you've done is really nice. I think you can really feel the story a lot more actually than your previous piece. My eye's drawn to this dog and this cat, which is really nice. I think the first thing that caught my eye here was just how bright this wall is getting. And I think compared to this ground, the wall looks like it's getting blasted pretty hard with light, almost like there's a spotlight, like that's like just shining perpendicular to this wall. So I did a little paint over here, and I think, yeah, you could take this wall down and this back wall down quite a bit, actually, I think. And I think you could also, yeah, I think you could also go brighter with your focal point here and then take down that wall, just so we're really drawn to this area here. If you go back, that's, your eye really goes to them, and especially if at some point you have movement in this, I think that will really draw the eye here. So all this paint over is just sort of dimming this wall down as well as the back, and really concentrating on this story point. I think another thing that would make it feel a little bit more like moonlight is just softening up the either making your light bigger or making the angle bigger of your distant light, or I'm not sure what renderer you're using, but just to make those shadows softer. This is a rough paint over, but they look quite hard right now, and I think, it feels slightly artificial to me. So, softening that out a bit, I think would help with this, make it feel a little bit more appealing on the characters as well. And then the last thing was the windows and the lights felt kind of red, too red to me. So I did sort of swing them a little bit more towards that yellow side. But yeah, I think it's in a great spot. I think it's just about sort of refining where you want the audience to look and what you want your story to be. But great job. This is from Forum. This is an update to one we looked at the other day, and I think this is working really well. So you decided on this side direction, and you incorporated a lot more sky fill, which I think is really helping with this. You also said you made it more colorful, which I think is a great call. I think what you did really makes it feel fun and like the jungle, which is really cool. There was a couple things here that caught my eye. Actually, let's watch the sequence first. So you talked about how the leaves might be going a little fast. I'm slowing this down quite a bit, so yeah, you talked about how the leaves might be going a little fast, and you also asked about depth of field. So in terms of the leaves, I think you've got that down. Make them feel how you want them to feel. In terms of depth of field, I do think, you talked about the photographer would be on a longer lens, which I think is a very good thing to think about. And in that case, this background, I think, is too sharp for a long lens on a branch that's relatively much closer than that background is to the camera. So I think you could blur this background out. I wouldn't want to lose it all the way, but I think blurring it out a little bit would help with the realism of the camera here. But I mean, I think the foreground depth of field is, maybe you can go a little bit blurrier, but it's not bumping for me. Mostly that background. I think one other thing that's throwing me with the background a little bit is how dark these darks are. And I think blurring it will help. But especially this hard dark edge back here, and also this forest down here. I think with how misty everything is, this would be pushed back quite a bit in real life. Somewhat like, let's see if we can, yeah, something like, I wouldn't want to lose this difference between values, so maybe this is a little much, but just keeping in mind the atmospheric perspective on everything, and then blurring it, I think will help a lot and help us draw our eye to the monkey, or at least not get distracted. I think one other thing that caught my eye on your shot, which is looking great, just small things. There's a plane on the face that's catching some light here. You see that? Oops. This line here, to me, was a little bit distracting. I think softening out this line, I'm not sure if it's in the model or what, but softening the transition between this top plane and this rounded plane, I think might help with the read a little bit more. You see how it's feeling a little bit softer there. I think this felt a little bit unnatural to me. And the other thing was, looking at that image sequence that you sent, I think I like the idea of this highlight on the edge of the monkey's face. I think it might be a little bit bright. I think the muzzle of the monkey is kind of furry, and it's feeling kind of wet. How strong this speck is, so I would probably take it down a little bit so we can really focus on his eyes. To have something that bright and contrasty, moving around with the monkey's animation, when we really want to be looking at the monkey's eyes and his acting, I think is a little bit distracting. So I would probably take that down a little bit. But I think, all this stuff is small nitpicks. I think it's looking really good. So great job on this. I think, adding the sky fill really helped sort of make the monkey feel like it's sitting in the environment. Now that I'm saying that, I wonder if this branch needs a little bit more cool fill. I see some of it here, so I'm a little torn on that. But maybe you could play around with lifting the shadows slightly on the bottom of this branch. Maybe a little bit more cool fill. I think that's really up to you. I think it's your taste at this point. It's reading really well as is. It's just small things that I'm wondering out loud. But yeah, awesome job on this. I think it's there. I think it's really good for a portfolio piece. I think you mentioned that you wanted to include it in there, so I would feel free, and I think all this artwork is never completely done, so maybe make those tweaks, put it in your reel, and then if you look at it 6 months later and you hate it, which is normal, I think, for all artists, then you can go ahead and do some more tweaks. But I think as is, I think it's a beautiful piece for a portfolio. So great job. All right. Last but not least, we have Carolina's reel, which we can take a look at. I'll kind of talk through it as we look at it. You did say, Carolina, that you were still going to add those, I don't know what to call it, but those bars that say what you did on all of these pieces, which I think is a crucial part of this, because you don't want whoever's looking at your reel to wonder, well, maybe she only, did a tiny bit of comp at the end, or maybe she didn't even work on them. Maybe she just modeled one leaf. So it's really important, I think, as you've said, to sort of include what you did on each piece. In terms of your question for look dev versus surfacing versus texturing, I think at Disney we say look dev. I think at DreamWorks they say surfacing. I think Pixar they say surfacing as well. So I would say surfacing or look dev is probably either one of them works. But yeah, be sure to include kind of everything you did, because I think it's useful, even if you're applying just for lighting, for people to see that you understand look dev. And your other question on this, before we kind of talk about specifics of the reel, is if this piece is too long. I think it is. I think it's nice, but I think it's too long. So I think your instincts are right. You could probably, cut it wherever you feel is necessary. But I think you're right in that, like, not too much happens with the camera or movement throughout this shot, so you can definitely shorten it. I will say this shot, there is something about it here that bumps a little bit for me, is that this wall totally bisecting the image is a little bit distracting for me. I think it really takes depth away from the image, how everything is parallel to the camera plane. I'm not sure what your circumstances are with this piece, but I think it doesn't really have as much depth as some of your other pieces. So I might consider, I would totally leave it in for now if you need to go ahead and apply for stuff. But if you wanted to rework something, I would say this piece could use some more depth, like turning some of the walls or something to make this cutting of the image a little bit less obvious here. But yeah, I really like the mood in this, which is nice, and you know the look dev you did on her face is pretty effective. She looks extremely upset, so that's great. All right, let's look from the beginning. Oh, I did turn off the music, and I did notice that it seems like your breakdowns were timed to the music, which is fun, but I guarantee you that anyone looking at your reel is not listening to the music, at least in a professional setting, because they're probably looking at hundreds of reels and they don't want to hear everyone's techno remixes. So most people just turn it off. So if it makes the flow of your reel better to cut not on the music, you should do that. You should prioritize sort of making your reel flow as best as possible without worrying if they're listening to the music, because they're probably not, just to be real. This piece we saw recently, of course, I think it looks great. Breakdown looks great. I do think it's nice you kept the breakdown short. I don't love it when there's like wipe after wipe after wipe of passes. At some point it doesn't show too much, so this is nice. I really like how you have one reference. I think something that we see a lot with reels is that they'll pop like 10 references on the screen and the image doesn't look like any of them, which is kind of a red flag. I think your reference image here looks a lot like, you can clearly see the correlation between what you did here and the reference image, so I think that's working really well. Breakdown again, which is nice. This one I would probably get rid of this this lighting challenge winner, to be honest. I mean, it's cool that you did win, but I'm not sure if it's needed for a reel. The other thing with this one is, let me think. I do like it, and you don't have a ton of like outdoor daytime stuff, but I do think, I'm not sure if you need this piece, to be honest, just because it's a still image, and yeah, to me it doesn't feel as strong as some of your other pieces, but I'm sort of on the edge with that. So I if you really like this image, I think take out this in the corner and then keep it in. Or if you're able to re-render it with some sort of cool camera movement or something, and not just a 2D push pull out, I think that would be really nice. But as a still, I think it's not the strongest. I think these first two are in a better spot. So I mean, I wonder, you put it in the middle of your reel, which I wonder if you feel the same way. But yeah, I don't know. In my opinion, just seeing this for the first time, I think maybe think about cutting this one. Not to say it's not a successful piece. I think one thing that's important to know is that, sounds scary, but you will be judged off of whatever the person looking at a reel thinks is the weakest piece, because no one really knows how much how long you spent on any of these, or how much help you had with any of these, but they'll automatically assume that the thing that they like the least in your reel is your baseline of work, right? It's a little bit harsh to say, but I think that's how a lot of people think, especially when they're running through reels like crazy, trying to sort out who they like the best. So just keep that in mind. I think with your own reel, you have to be really ruthless with what you keep in there, and kind of separate it from the work that you put into it. and just kind of try to see an objective eye as to like, you know, not only what is objectively the best piece in there, but also what does it show that my other pieces don't show. So anyway, things to think about. This is cool. I think this piece is really nice. I think it shows a lot of, character lighting with camera movement, I think is something that's quite difficult, and not a lot of pieces show that. So I think this is great to include here. This one's sort of interesting, but I think it's not as interesting as some of your other pieces, especially, when you look at this. There's just not as much going on here, so, I think this is fine to keep in for now, but if you do work on more stuff, this might be on the chopping block. If you get something else that you're really proud of in there. But yeah, I think around the 1 minute mark is totally good for a reel. So if you're able to sort of cut everything that is not super, super impressive, I think that's probably the way to go. I apologize, if this sounds harsh or anything like that. I'm just seeing this and objectively looking at it as someone who has looked at a lot of entry level reels before. So hopefully it kind of comes off. My cat is yelling. Hopefully it kind of comes off in like a, I'm just trying to help sort of way. Really not trying to be so harsh or anything. Yeah, this piece is really beautiful. So I'm really glad that you're starting with this piece. And yeah, I think it's looking great. I think, maybe some trimming, especially of this last piece. Definitely add those borders and what you did for each piece. It can be nice to add what programs you used as well. Some studios are looking for some experience with certain programs, so adding that in there. And then, yeah, okay, I was gonna say putting your name at the beginning and the end, I think is great. I see you added the programs here, so if they're all the same, then it's totally fine. You can just leave it as is. But yeah, can't think of too much else. Let me know what you think, and I think we can have a discussion about your thoughts on any of my remarks or anything. But yeah, I'm looking forward to see what you do with this. I think it's a really strong reel. I should have said that from the very beginning, but if it's not clear, I think it's a very strong reel. Especially these first two pieces, I think are really stunning, and I like this one a lot as well. So, great job with this. Yeah, awesome job.